After my presentation, I think there were a lot of questions, and those questions really gave me a lot of good ideas how I can have better answers of those questions because now we have the experts. I would like to briefly introduce the panel. It's an amazing opportunity because we have different. It's a really good mix of industry experts. What we have, starting from charging infrastructure, starting with CPOs and then manufacturers, service providers. So all of them. I expect to have a very good discussion, all of you, with all of you. I welcome all of you, and I don't think we need to introduce any one of them, but I have prepared the introduction, so please allow me to do that. I would like to start from my left. We have Raveen Mirchandani. He is the Chief Dream Merchant, Quench EV Chargers. Raveen is a visionary leader in the electric vehicle charging industry. Not only in the charging industry, he has been leading several group companies of Adore Group. Recognized for his strategic leadership and impactful contributions. I welcome you, Raveen. Next in line, we have Mr. Avadhesh Jha. Again, he doesn't need any introduction. Mr. Jha is a prominent advocate for electric mobility in India, renowned for his inspiring speeches on charging infrastructure and sustainability. Welcome, Mr. Jha. Then we have Puneet Agrawal. He is heading Smart Mobility Sustainable IoT for Geo Platforms Limited. Puneet is a distinguished expert in smart mobility and sustainable IoT, and a lot of experience which goes beyond 1.5 decades. So we can have a lot of good inputs from Puneet. Then from my right hand side, we have Arth. He is the CEO of Terex Chargers. I think the youngest one who is in the charges, one of the youngest one who is in the charging manufacturing business. Mr. Patel is young and dynamic leader in the electric mobility sector with focus on AI and passion about applying innovative technology to solve real life situations and the challenges. Then we have Hitender Vigmal. He is heading the sales for Bright Blue. Mr. Vigmal is a leading advocate for electric mobility, renowned for his strategic insights and significant contributions to the field. Not last, but not the least, we have Mr. PM Singh. You know, in this panel, I think he is the most technically sound, so we are going to ask some of the technical questions. And you also be please ready with some of the technical questions which you have for Mr. Singh. So thank you very much, all of you joining. As always, I'll start with Avdesh sir. During the last conversation, I remember, you know, when we were on a different panel, Avdesh ji was quite excited about, you know, the overall development of the charging infrastructure business, as he is always, and he has set up the direction also of several initiatives. He mentioned one very interesting thing about you know, positive of this industry, that I'll quote him, that fortunately Ministry of Power has stopped issuing any guideline in last 1 year. So that really removes a lot of confusion from the market, and market is ready to move with its pace. I think somebody was hearing you in that panel, and very soon, just recently, they have introduced the new guidelines. So in these guidelines, I think there are a lot of things which we can debate, and I would like to ask to you about the service charges. So government has proposed, right, the ceiling limit of service charges, which can be levied for different CPOs. Don't you think that if we implement such ceiling and restrict CPOs in terms of innovation, because they can't go for differentiated pricing, and then we talk about experience of charging infrastructure, value-added services, and you need to have a good place wherein you can have coffee and all those things. You need to have a very good charger manufacturer like Quench and Tarex. So how do you manage that if that regulation is implemented?
Yeah. So good morning. First of all, I would like to make a very clear statement that we don't consider this as a regulation, because regulation has a statutory effect This is a guidelines by the Ministry of Power. And so we don't treat this as a regulation per se. But yes, guidelines which, the problem with the guidelines, why I last time also said, and I keep saying that Ministry of Power should not issue the guidelines, is that since it doesn't have a binding effect on the state regulators, and by virtue of that, not on the distribution company. So what they do, they pick and choose what is convenient to them, what is beneficial to them, but they do not implement which is beneficial or the useful for the larger customer. I give you an example. The guidelines mention that distribution company is bound to give electricity connection in 7 days or at max in 15 days, irrespective of which locations you are going and set up the charging stations. That is never done. That is never done. Now, the guidelines also says that the input price should be the average purchase cost of supply plus 15%. Many states have not followed that one. The guideline says up to March 2025, fixed demand should not be applied. What has happened rather, when the Ministry of Guidelines had not issued these guidelines in 2023, till that point of time, most of the states were not having the fixed demand charges. Once these guidelines were issued, most of the states started applying the fixed demand charges. So I'm of the view that if the guidelines you are not able to enforce with the state regulators and the distribution companies, what is the point of coming up with the guidelines? Second, generally these guidelines are issued not by having a larger stakeholder consultation. When I say stakeholder consultations, I strongly believe that the private charge point operator is going to play an important role in setting up the infrastructure in country. But government generally brings the PSUs, whom they have mandated that they have to invest those 1,000 crore, which is under the FAME 2. So they take their input, they take Ministry of Power's, subsidiary, I would say, or rather say the constituent units, and the DISCOM companies, mostly the government DISCOMs. Now, you do not have the inputs from the private sector as well. And even if we give, generally it is not heard. So the point is, and then second part is the customer's viewpoint. Do you hear what customer wants? When I interact with the customers who comes to our charging stations, they are not worried about what is the price you are charging. They are more worried about where the power is available or not. Along the highways, most of our chargers are 50%, 60% time available. 40, 50% of the time it is not available. Why? Because there is no 24/7 supply. So in view of all those things, I don't see there is a merit of bringing out the guidelines if it cannot be enforced with the state authority. That's number one. Specific to the service fee, by the way, I'm also the chairman of the Indian Charge Point Operators Associations, which comprises of GOBP, Charge Zone, GLIDA, Xeon, and then we have Adore, we have a couple of more OEMs. Now, we have been continuously writing to the government that why you are going for a service fee cap. Because service fee cap is not that easy. You can do a service fee cap where you know the one technology is existing. Now in the charging, AC has a different capital cost. Even in the DC, you have a different capex. A 60 kilowatt charger has a different capex. 120 kilowatt charger has a different capex. Now we are going for a modular chargers. Recently we have installed a few modular chargers of 200 kilowatt with a 6 dispensers. Each dispenser can dispense 25 kilowatt to 150 kilowatt chargers. Now this is a capex heavy. This requires a huge electrical infrastructure cost. Like Rabin would explain, they are coming up with these 360 kilowatt chargers with the modular satellites. Now these costs has a different element. Now when you are fixing a service fee cap, we are asking that what are the parameters you have considered, because the service fee is dependent of the capex, the opex, and importantly the utilization of the chargers. Today most of the public charging stations have utilization of 4%. Now, if you are saying that, they say that capex recovery could be 10 rupees or 11 rupees per unit other than the electricity. This could be valid for, let's say, 30 kilowatt, 60 kilowatt chargers. But if we set up a 240 kilowatt chargers, what should I do? Because you do not mention that this is applicable only for 30 or 60 kilowatt. So the problem which I highlight on behalf of association as well is that if you, first of all, you should not, because this is a industry. You should left it to the industry. What you should do, and in fact, I was discussing with, Manoj from JBM, that what government should do. There are two pain points of the charge point operators: electricity connections and the locations available. Because in India, 80% of the public location is owned by government. You make these locations equitably accessible. I'm saying equitably, I'm not saying equally. Equitably accessible to the private as well as the public entities, and make the electrical infrastructure reliable. You concentrate on these two aspects. Leave other things to the industry, they will sort it out. Consumer will force the customer that what is the price you should charge from us. Today you are going into a different direction. You are putting the cart before the horse. First fix the problem, which is the electricity and the land, and the market will take care of the rest of the things. So that's why I'm against this service.
Yeah, thank you very much for your input. Mr. Jha, you talked about, government should not come out with frequent guidelines, which they were not coming out, but now they have, because they receive inputs. Maybe they do not have a true representation of the industry from where they receive, but they receive the inputs, and that is on the act on. So I think we need, in India, we need to have a very strong association, not only with the charging point operators, but the manufacturers and all of them, so that we can strongly give the realistic insights to the government, because I'm sure government will not probably stop issuing the guideline, because they have already taken the initiative and they will continue on it. And why have they been doing this? My observation is they have some understanding. Now the government advisory bodies are much better than before, so they have at least some inputs. I remember the current Prime Minister going to NASSCOM, a few years back when he became the Prime Minister around 2015-14, and he really talked about how the IT revolution in India happened. And he mentioned that probably government was nowhere. So that is how that revolution happened. But because now they have the understanding, so that will continue. So we need a proper representation with a very strong association, I believe, is the way forward. But I take your point. And I asked Raveen the inputs around these ceiling charges. Obviously, you are not directly, Raveen, involved in the CPO business. You are not the front ending it, but your company is one of the top charger manufacturers in India. You're putting intracity on highways everywhere. Even you have exported some of them to Europe, I believe, if I'm right. So don't you think this kind of ceiling eventually hamper the product quality also? It will restrict you going for more and more innovations?
Yeah, I'll give a high-level answer there. First up, I want to just rejoin what Avadesh has said. We were both part of the industry CEO roundtable last week. We talked to the two secretaries from the industry, and we were talking about this BIS, directive that has come out. And one of the interesting things there is a confusion whether it's regulation or policy or a suggestion. And it says a minimum highway charging should be 250 kilowatts. But everybody uses a 30 kilowatt converter, so you're going to be at 240 kilowatts. And so suddenly you're going to have this big discussion with either the oil marketing companies or regulators or people who approve you on whether you comply or don't, and it's a stupid conversation to be having. Another one is a government order that comes out and says no converters to be imported after December 2024. Governments are very good at talking to themselves, much like big companies, not really understanding what's going on in the market. So when the secretary had said, oh, we spoke to all the OEMs, and therefore we've come up with this directive, I had a quiet conversation at the side and said, which OEMs did you speak to? Because you didn't ask us. And his answer was, we spoke to the OMCs. We spoke to the oil marketing companies. No, they don't make chargers. So you're not going to really get the right answers if you're making policy directives. So I completely agree with you that we need to be having an industry association that covers both the service companies, the CPOs, as well as the manufacturers, such as all of the people on the panel here today. And then the government needs to listen. As Avdesh said, the government doesn't always listen. But we're getting to that point where you're getting inflection in the industry, and you cannot be having policy that is confused, because it's not going to be good for the country. Secondly, if you want, the Prime Minister says we want India to be an export hub. That's nice to say, but let's see what happens beyond that, right? Most of what's coming to India still is Chinese, right? It's assembled, it's branded, and it's sold. Now, if you want to export from India, and you're an Indian manufacturer, you want to get UL approval or CE approval, you go to ARAI for your IEC certificate. We did that. But the IEC certificate we got failed when we got to Australia because their NABL certification had expired. Now try talking to a government body to say, you need to help me and do this quick in 2 weeks. For them, it's, oh, I'll get to it in 6 months. So the whole ecosystem isn't geared around excellence or building India as an export hub or creating in India a world-class infrastructure. It's up to companies such as Glida here to import something incredibly expensive to be able to demonstrate that this is what world-class means. It isn't about getting the cheapest charger. So I think as an ecosystem, we also need to move away from L1. You need to give points to Indian infrastructure, Indian-made infrastructure, just like in America, just like in Australia, just like in the UK. If you're really serious, then promote and give extra points to what is made in India. Don't just buy the cheapest, because if it's cheapest, it'll always be Chinese. Right? The biggest company in India is probably making 10,000 chargers a year. I'll ask Mr. PMG to confirm. The Chinese do that in a week. In a week. The scale that they have will decimate us if we only go for L1.
It's true. Suggestions are also very, very. I mean, if you're comparing India to be a kind of as far as to the developed markets, probably these are very good suggestions. But changing to procurement, going beyond L1 probably is very, very difficult to think in India. First of all, so your idea of actually addressing entire ecosystem development, I think, is a very, very great idea. What we are trying to do, managing things in bits and pieces. For example, let's say imports. So we do not want imports from a particular country. We want 50% level of localization from tier 1, and then we don't have checking mechanism, etc. So that really makes things not very practical. So thank you very much. I think this brings me to to you, Mr. Singh, about you have seen the transformation of charging happening in India. And I believe initially it was 50 kilowatt hour chargers, then it moved to 30 kilowatt hour chargers. Now Raveen and Mr. Patel and your company also is planning much beyond than 150, 200, 240, 300 kilowatt chargers, right? So this evolution is happening in India. With this evolution, you need to manage so many things, right? One is profitability issues, and then you need to think about content localization. You need to think about making the business profitable. So I would like to understand from you how this journey has been and how you have been able to innovate the kind of solutions and the chargers which addresses different segments. For example, in buses, maybe you have done some innovation and business is profitable. So your experience around those areas.
Yeah. Good morning to everybody. Thank you, Pratik. Actually, in India, when we start the 2018, I think charger started, no spec is available. People are making the only AC chargers and DC charger, Bharat 001. That Bharat 001 will come in because nobody have the high power, high voltage. Because actually, the charger technology depends on the OEM, vehicle OEM plus charger. They are the joint venture. If you do the charger good quality, the fast charging, then battery will not sustain. Then this is also problem. So this is the win-win situation for EV manufacturer and charger manufacturer. So now coming to the journey from initially they have the DC01, that time India no have the spec, nothing, so only low voltage. Only 2 OEM have the only low voltage battery supporting. That time battery power very less. So there's a 15 kilowatt, 20 kilowatt, or maybe 30 kilowatt, 2 gun, a single gun. Then go to the AC01, that's a very low cost and housing. But now after that, the innovation happened, the battery chemistry, and they charging the more power. So they're doing the more 1C, initially the 0.5C, now the 1C, now people are working the 2C. So the charger point of view, you have to give the more power. So this is the joint venture with the EV charger there. Now coming to the after, some standard has happened because all of people are member of the ETD 150, when we have that discussed. Then CCS, CHAdeMO, GBT, finally government come out with the CCS and CHAdeMO. I think your report has also mentioned. Luckily, government have focused on the chargers, CCS. Now all manufacturers maximum with the high power charging, high voltage charging, means like 200 to 1000 volts. So these charger, only one charger can work up the vehicle, like a car, or maybe bus, or maybe truck, depend upon the voltage and current. So now the journey for the charger, then when initially they have the 20 kilowatt, then 30 kilowatt, then 60 kilowatt. Then after that, the lot of the bus manufacturers, they require 240 kilowatt. Because the challenge was that the battery chemistry also, so they're not taking much power. Now the technology developed, so charger, they require more current in the east. Then they will take more time, so they use the two battery, they will use the two gun. So this, I say the India, because people criticize the India, but I say India is the number one for technology wise, because when the two gun solution, nobody have in the our neighbor country, other country. So the with the help of the OEM, it's a big OEM, they making the bus for two gun solution. So that the standard was not there in India. So thanks to ETD 51, we have developed this standard, now the launch finally. So this charger work up to 120 to 240, even the 400 kilowatts. Now we are still today we have the 360 or 400 charger, 400 kilowatt charger. He can pump up to maximum 300 ampere charging to the vehicle. So OEM can do the mouse faster. So this is the renovation that's coming. And after that, they have the distributed charger. What has mentioned the because distributed charger, you can utilize the powerhouse, the backside, then you can small utilization much better.
Yeah. So one follow-up question: what's your opinion about India moving from not moving but having one more option in terms of wireless charging or pantograph charging or any new innovation happening in future, because it's currently restricted to battery swapping, that to only for two-wheelers and three-wheelers and passenger cars on fixed charging?
Very, very good question you asked. Because right now, you see you mentioned the vandalization. So if the innovation point of vandalization, that today we see in the many cases, the gun they will vandalize. So the charger, if charger available, power is available, cannot charge. So this technology, because if you use the like inductive charging or maybe other charging, so there's no need to the gun. So conductive charging. So this is also technology people are coming now. R&D already done. We also working on the same, some research fellows. Then coming to the next Pentagon charging. So we also working in the Pentagon charging because they got the high truck, there's some big OEM. So we are working together with the power charger sides. They are working the vehicle side. So this is also new technology coming in India.
So how much time it is going to take to before we adopt such technologies, the newer? They are in pilot phase, or do we have?
Right now, the pilot phase.
So, Mr. Singh, Jha sir, Mr. Singh was talking about vandalism, which is one of the very common issues, and that's not only because sometimes the challenge is we are habitual of, too much convenience, right? So once we go to the petrol pump or CNG station, we need everything to be taken care by other people. There are people who take care everything. Even if I'm a technologically sound person, if I go to the charging station, similar behavior is there. I want everything to be managed by other people, not by myself. So I look at the charger. So first thing I try to find out somebody who can help me. Nobody is there because charging stations are unmanned because of the financial viability challenges. So do you think some newer technology adoptions or the technology can play a role in this, wherein you see limited vandalism happening or this issue being addressed? This issue as well as the other. I will also ask one more question to you, which is different and which is related to the policy. So your comment on this question. And then you talked about the approval of timelines, right? Now in the new guideline also it mentions 3 days to 90 days. 3 days, 7 days, 15 days, 30 days, 90 days. It was earlier there also. So as you said, because it's not mandate, it's not regulation. So the agencies choose what is convenience for them, putting a high price and service charge and all those things. So do you think any change in this happening through new guideline, at least from their office, because they from the government side, because they also are putting up a technology solution for that in the same guideline?
Okay, so first of all, the question of the vandalism, right? Yes, it has been reported in some of the charging stations, and I will not go into the ownership of those chargers where the vandalism has happened. See, I think the vandalism is not necessarily because it's unmanned. That's why the vandalism is happening. Obviously, electrical infrastructure anywhere is prone to theft because of the copper element there. Wherever it will remain unattended, unused, that will be vulnerable to these kind of unsocial activities, I would say. See, we have currently we are operating around 474 chargers, which is around 800 charging points across 30 cities and 16 states. We have not experienced even a single case of vandalism. And when we try to understand what could be the reason, probably because our chargers are being used by the customer. So if any assets, even if it is unmanned, normally when you say unmanned, it doesn't mean that we have put it in the wilderness. This is in a shopping mall, this is in, along the dhaba. It's in the place where there is always a movement of the people. It's not in isolated desert jungle where you people can go and steal it. So your movement is always under watch. If they believe that this location, nobody is coming ever, so easily we can mishandle this particular assets. I think the vandalism is happening mostly in those locations where there is no utilizations or infrastructure has not been fully built to use. Because you might have come to know, because I have seen personally in Noida, 142 kilowatt chargers, right, with a 60 kilowatt CCS, 60 kilowatt demo gun, and 22 kilowatt type 2. Charger is installed in a very much marketplace, but it doesn't have the electricity connections, right? Now that charger is doing nothing, just occupying a space, giving on your books that yes, we have a charger installed there. But the customer will see, or the people on social element will see over a period of time what's the movement around these chargers. And gradually they will find that this is an easy prey, which we can get. So I think this is something which we need to factor in. Coming back to the second question which you said on the timelines, whether this will help. First of all, the guidelines currently, the good part the government has done is that after consolidating this, they have put it in the public domain. And now they are seeking the public opinion as well. So I would urge all of you that please read those guidelines. And as a consumer perspective, I mean, depending upon your profile, please share your views with the government. And I would personally like the consumers to give their view, because just by saying, like Ravin was saying, that 500 kilowatt chargers is required to be set up. Now, this is the requirement of the government, that for a high range vehicles and heavy electric vehicles. Now, I asked the government, in the entire guidelines, you have not defined what do you mean by high range vehicles. What is high range? Is it 100 kilometer? It's a 500 kilometer. Which vehicle is in your target? Is it BMW or it is some other car? So high range vehicle not defined. How do you make out of that? Now, why do you require a 500 kilowatt chargers to be set up when the vehicle requires 180 kilowatt maximum? I think currently in India, to the best of my knowledge, and I would stand corrected if someone can give me the right information. I believe Kia probably has 180 kilowatts or 200 kilowatts. I think Priyans, you would be in the audience, and you have the experience of this one. Probably 180 to 200 kilowatt is the maximum demand which they are doing it. Now you are asking 500 kilowatt chargers to be installed as a guidelines. Now what will happen? The state nodal agency, who are the state nodal agencies? Most of the time it is DISCOM. What experience they have into the EV charging business? Probably no, except for one or two DISCOMs who are doing it, particularly in the private sector. Now, if they don't have the understanding that why do you require a 500 kilowatt, they will go by strictly by the letter which is written in the guidelines, and they will demand that unless you do the 500 kilowatt charger, I will not give you the permissions to energize it. Now, why do we set up a 500 kilowatt charger which will cost me a bomb? Utilization will be nil. Now, unless the policy makers involve the real CPOs, then you'll come out with these kind of a guidelines. So I'm saying that these guidelines, first of all, is a draft at this stage. It's seeking consultations, stakeholder opinions. We are also giving our views there. But if it is implemented as it is, again, this is going to create a lot of chaos and confusion.
Yeah, thank you very much. Again, same observation, Udheshi. You call for consumers also reading the draft guideline, giving inputs, probably again through the association. That is the better way. So probably that can submit it to the association through association it can reach to the government, so that there will be, I think, better hearing. Mr. Singh, you wanted to comment on this.
Yeah, Pratik,
After your comment, I will move to Hitender and also Puneet about, how technology can play the role around the issues, the consumer issues around the charging infrastructure, which we also talked in our report. Mr. Singh.
Pratik, I want to add some point for the technology wise. Because right now you mentioned the power. So now the power, because you have the storage battery, solar plus battery, that with the like a grid condition. I see your report. So grid condition, if you can, people are focusing on manufacturers also making the solar with battery, then support the peak power. So that the grid can be connection with the lower, that will be the much better. And second point, like you see nowadays a lot of problem facing the real customer. You go to the charger, they go to the RFID, they go to the password, there are a lot of problems they are facing. So now the technology wise, now we are also working, some other people are also working, I think Ravish is also working, plug-in charge. So very hassless, because customer goes simple, hit plug, then charging start. There's no need to go to the password, no need to go to RFID, no to the display. So this also new technology, but this gives the real end customer advantage. I think Ravi, you agree with me.
Yeah, thank you very much.
On that thing, I would like to add that even the most experienced people, for example, I take my example, I don't mind taking it. A few weeks ago, I was on a call with someone and I was driving my car and it had low charge. So I went to a charging station. I went to a charging station nearby, and because I was on call, due to that fact, I was still waiting for someone to, plug the charger in my car. Because of the fact that I had been driving an ICE vehicle for the last 7 years, I was still under that mindset that someone will come, he'll plug the charger into my car and I'll have to pay him or her whatever it is. But then I realized that, okay, I have to get out of the vehicle, do whatever the authentication. When I went out, I had to add money to my wallet of whatever the app I was using. I had to, recharge that. It took me a good 5 minutes of time to recharge the wallet. Then again, plugging in, plugging out the vehicle, because it never works on the first time. So plugging in, plugging out took again another more 5-10 minutes. So the whole charging process for me was roughly 15 minutes, even when it comes from someone who has been making chargers for the last 6 years. So I can only imagine how a non-charger OEM person who would go to a vehicle, just a normal consumer, how long that would take them to charge their cars. So these things like plug and charge, as rightly PM sir said, has to come as soon as possible. Here I have observed in the Indian industry, particularly when it comes to plug and charge specifically, a lot of OEMs are doing their workaround rather than following the exact standard which says how to do plug and charge, which covers the facts of cyber security, the facts of your vehicle getting hacked and whatnot. They are just doing a workaround way, which may work in the short term, but when you look at the long term effects of doing that workaround, it will be very bad. So in short, basically the OEMs, the charger OEMs, as well as the vehicle OEMs, they have to work seamlessly, again, as rightly said by PM sir, that we have to work together to ensure that whatever we give out to the public market is validated as per the global standards, not just because you feel like doing it or it feels good to do in India and doing a public trial of the fact.
Correct. I think innovations through collaboration with OEM charger manufacturers, that too based on the consumer inputs, is the way forward. Thank you very much for your opinion. I think you have opened up a new era of questions. So I have, one additional question for both of you. In addition to what I mentioned earlier, Puneet and Hitender, I'll start with Puneet. That if you're a really EV consumer, and you're driving your EV, so how you're doing the charging, right? First of all, generally what happens, people check on Google that chargers near to me, then find out, okay, there is a charger by this CPU, and then they download this CPU application. And once you download the CPU application, then you reach there. Sometimes you find the chargers working, sometimes you don't find the chargers working, and then you don't know how to, there is no support available there. So in this entire process, obviously, as Arth was mentioning, right, we are habitual of too much convenience. So we want everything to be managed by somebody else, and we just pay for that. So in this entire process, do you foresee technology solutions supporting this future, or ultimately we have to put up a manned station? What's your opinion on that? And an open question with this is how you are trying to solve issues around charging infrastructure through technology solutions.
Thank you. I think it's good to see, and I think a lot of the conversation around the government policies and stuff is physical infrastructure, and thank you for bringing this, because I think this is one industry and segment specifically in India, and India has been known to leapfrog certain segments actually, and I think digital is going to play a very important component here actually. And your question leads for across the board. For example, I think some of the experienced people here would know energy losses back 20 years were about 37%, which included theft as well as T&D losses, right? And over the time, because of the interventions, specifically digital, it actually went down a lot, right? I think this is one segment where we can be by default digitally enabled. And that's very much necessary from everybody's perspective. So when convenience of charging and payment one, I think discovery and really identifying whether it is working, because that is what I saw the other problem statement was, again, it has to be all integrated and connected as well, right? You gave an example, people search on Google, but to be honest, that's how they search the restaurants, but for booking, they go somewhere else. And to find the discounts as well. I think we forgot one consumer mindset from India perspective is also that wherever you find the cheapest service, you would probably want, or somebody who's discounting. But I think, look, the major problem, 4% utilization by CPOs. Some of them have done a good job of managing their charging stations, irrespective of manned, non-manned, etc. But I think a very seamless access to the end consumer is very important. And then going and reaching that place and having that experience is next thing, which I'm sure plug-in charge and few other standards once adopted, properly adopted by the OEMs. We'd love to see that as well. I think that's a big change management, but I'm sure I think industry is working towards it. But the charging station itself, what we are seeing and working with quite a few CPOs now is digital system out of the box for complete charging management systems, right? Which means you have a really smart monitoring systems, surveillance systems, specifically catering to charge stations so that you can just not monitor, if there is any vandalism which is happening, or you preempt all of those things, but also seeing what are the behaviors of charging, guns left unattended, or they've been not properly kept, or somebody did something else on these places, etc. Because there will be places where on the highways, etc., where I'm not sure whether you can really have too much movement of people or vehicles, etc. So those places will be, in kind of wilderness as well, and that has to happen. The second is the overall consumption of a charging station. Today we only talk about one charge, just a charge point or a charge, charger. But just taking an example for a fleet operator, there's 4 or 5 to 50 kilowatt charging chargers which have been put. We're talking about 10 megawatt hours of consumption per day. Does DISCOMs or the government does even know that what is the consumption patterns which are there from EV charging perspective? That's not been there, right? And this is going to be considerably increasing from transportation perspective. Number of households in India are less as compared to total number of vehicles per se. I'm including two-wheelers as well. And the rate at which they are increasing, even the households are not increasing. So we can assume the consumption patterns which have been observed over the years for consumption of energy in the houses, transportation is just going to be a next level actually. And we really don't know that. So to influence DISCOMs and to give access to all of these information, I think we need to have real-time data so they can be all the demand response, peak demands, and in fact enabling a lot of open access stuff which they are now doing specifically on the energy side of it. But I think for EV charging it can be truly enabled, because that's where it will be true sustainable, true green energy solutions actually. We are doing EV but still using the power from the fossil fuels and everything. So I think that becomes very important, and integrating it backwards to the grid. I think that's few of the points which out of the digitally native, specifically in EV charging and EV ecosystem overall. I think that is what is the need of the hour also, and I think those should be factored in the policies too. Maybe as guidelines and the recommendations, they might not mandate it for now, but we would recommend that it should be actually mandated as well. Otherwise, we'll have a chaos after 5 years, 50% of charge is not working, or even the power is there, but the transformers are not working, or the charges are available, consumer reaches there by driving half an hour but still not able to access because it's not working for whatever reasons actually, and real-time prompts, etc.
Thank you very much, Puneet, for just suggesting, next level of innovations or the next set of work what government should focus on rather than focusing on current issues. But the challenge is, the current issues itself are not being addressed and taking a lot of time. So yes, but such insights are really helpful. I think they are aware about it, but bringing transmission and distribution losses, increasing renewable energy penetration, increasing the financial situation of discoms, etc., is a mammoth task. I'm sure they might be doing, but yes, that's valid point. And I agree on your opinion about technology has potential to solve, several challenges across the value chain. Before I move into, manufacturing side of it, because we have a lot of representation on manufacturing. We have covered that in the report also. I want Hitender to talk about the technology side of it and how in entire ecosystem the technology can probably solve at least some of them. Your opinion, and then from Earth, I'll begin with the charger manufacturing.
So, hi everyone. Having represented two companies over the last 5 years, first of all, I was heading ABB eMobility, and now I'm heading the sales at BrightBlue. I'll bring in experience from not only from the manufacturer side but also from the EV user side. So, first of all, on the guidelines that have been drafted by Ministry of Power along with BEE, the draft guidelines, as they say, there are some good points also. That, for example, they have proposed improved grid coverage of 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer. And yes, they are not clear on the long range vehicles, but that I think with the G20 initiative that they have taken with the net zero trucking initiative, they wanted to have that 250 kilowatt into two things, the 250 kilowatt into two charging stations every 100 kilometer, I would say, for the long range vehicles. But then again, it calls for point of discussion wherein they have mentioned categorically proposed ceiling rates as based on time of usage, non-solar and solar time. Good discussion, but then limiting it to 3.7 rupees for an AC charger is ridiculous, because at my home I charge my car at 6.5 rupees in Gurugram. So it costs me 6.5 rupees in Gurugram charging my Nexon EV over the night every second day. And if I have to pay 3.72 rupees at a public charging station, AC charging point, that doesn't serve purpose.
This is the best way to increase the utilization.
Yeah, utilization will be increased, but then the quality of the charging stations that will be put up at those places will be diminished like anything. For those of you who are there in this industry from last 6 years, have seen multiple hazardous incidents. Some of them get reported, some of them don't get reported. There is a reason why a charger costs X rupees and another charger costs 2X rupees. And there are key quality components that go into ensuring surge protection, inbuilt RCD, and other stuff, maybe ingress protection also. But then when you are compromising on the charging rate, you're actually forcing CPOs to go back on the L1 route, and not inviting the big technology players to actually exploit and give better technological rates. So I agree with Avdesh sir that it should be left to the private players or to the CPOs to decide, and government should actually be focusing on rectifying the electrical infrastructure. Let me be very frank, whenever I have gone to a public charging station, I would say more than 30 to 40% of time I have experienced a problem wherein there is an over voltage. Now, how many people are talking from the grid side on that thing? In fact, OEMs and the CPOs have started adjusting it to that, and the big players like Exicom, Ador, Tyrex, who are manufacturing DC chargers, and including the multinationals also, they are now required to give the DC chargers with input voltage range of 480 volt. And some of them are even going to 520 volt, if I am correct, because they have to reduce down the cost of voltage stabilizer. Trust me, it's a pain more than what Earth explained, that yes, the ideology or the mindset when, for example, I go to a charging station, I would like someone to pull the plug in, just take the payment from me, start the charging, because already I have a mindset that I'll have to spend 40-50 minutes at the station to charge my car. Minimum is that period. No matter whatever anyone talks to you about 15 minutes charging period, the minimum time that you will spend on a charger if you're using a mass car will be minimum 40 to 45 minutes. During that time, if there are voltage spikes, if there is unstable grid, it will harm your experience. It will actually not motivate you to take your car outside. I'll narrate my experience here. I have been to Patni Top on my Nexon EV Prime. Just imagine me driving from Ludhiana to Pathankot. There is a 204-kilometer journey. In the midst of winters, with my heater on, my car battery fell down to 3%. And when I am at the charging station, power is not there. Power is there, then the over voltage is coming. I had to spend next 10 hours there to charge my car from a 3-pin socket. Next time, my family was not motivated enough to go on an EV drive. And when they will share this experience with 10 other people, they'll not be motivated enough to go for an EV. So right now, what government needs to think, along with the electrical players, electrical giants, is to improve the stability of the electrical infrastructure. And yes, not only formulate the guidelines at the central level, but also push the state level to adopt those guidelines. Because one of the major things I'll also point out here, because in my experience, I have been working with the CPOs like Xeon, Lion, and Argo, and all of them have been complaining about the electrical infrastructure availability in their individual state. Just imagine, up till few months back in Tamil Nadu, if you are applying for an electrical infrastructure, you will be given an LT connection up to 49 kilowatt. So if Xeon is installing a 50 kilowatt machine, he's forced to operate it at 44-45 kilowatt, those machines. And why is it so? Because the moment you go above the 50 kilowatt rate, you are having an HT connection. You're having the electrical infrastructure getting above that. So I've recently, yes, some of the manufacturers were called. I will perfectly agree with Ravin sir that not all the manufacturers, not all the EV fleet players, not all the CPO players were invited to MHI meeting, which was recently held. And yes, since that didn't happen, but there was a point of discussion there wherein they are eager to, raise the cap to 150, 200, or 200 kVA connection in LT. That will reduce down the burden, because if you haven't seen the new dispenser units that Fortum has placed in Gurgaon, it's a wonderful unit. But then the capital investment, I can only imagine coming from the company that I was earlier working in, it would have shot the roof. No matter how much is the utilization, no matter how many Tigors come there from Uber, the utilization will not increase. The utilization will only increase when each gun is actually dispensing 25 kilowatt per minimum for 12 to 15 hours. So the main point is that yes, EV users should be educated. There should be more OEMs coming up with their cars in the market so that people have more choice to buy the vehicle from, and it is going to happen. The windfall year is 2025, 2024, it has started happening already. But yes, the second rate utilization has to go up so that CPOs can actually put up good charging stations at good locations. And yes, there has to be a thought process behind investing in this business, because all of us have seen multiple companies coming in failing as CPOs. Why? They will go for a handsome 300 kilowatt, 200 kilowatt charging station in the midst of the city. That is not required. If you are putting a charging station in the heart of the city, you need to have the agreements with the fleet operators to have the utilization above 10%, 15% or 20%. But if you are putting up a DC charging station inside the city without having an agreement with a fleet operator, you will end up losing the money. You need to put up the charging station more on highways. And yes, during your discussion, sir, you mentioned there that yes, tier 2 cities, one of the gentlemen here mentioned that tier 2 cities are not getting captured. I think the evolution of CPOs has happened to a big scale now. People were initially putting up charging stations in Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, Hyderabad. Now you see charging stations at Kosi, Salem, Tindivanam, these places which you have never heard about on the map. And those charging stations are, yes, 50 kilowatt, 120 kilowatt, 240 kilowatt. But yes, this type of information along with the reliable EV infrastructure will only propel the EV revolution, because the numbers that have been coming from the last 2-3 months on the sale of four-wheelers, they are good, but not that encouraging. We are still stuck up at 6,500, 7,000, when it should have by now jumped up to 10,000, 15,000 cars per month. So this is
Thank you for covering a lot of areas. I think now I'll move on last set of questions and spend around 6-7 minutes on that, and then I will take the concluding remarks and open it for questions. Starting with Earth, in our report also we talked about charger localization in India. Please allow me 30 seconds to give the background. It's like moving from one powertrain to other powertrain, right? So it's not only about the business. It's not only about keeping everything to the industry stakeholder and industry taking its own shape, because there is interest from government side at a strategy level. So that manufacturing import dependency is also one part of it. In case of electric vehicles itself, if I look at the journey, a lot of interventions has happened. Some of them succeeded, some of them not succeeded. Like in India in 2013-14, India wanted actually to kind of standardize all components. So the vehicle the vehicle structure itself. So you have the scale. What is your opinion, Arth, about current level of localization in India? What are the challenges and how this can improve in future, and how this is going to take a realistic shape and evolve in future? You, and then from Raveen, and then I will open it for questions.
Again, as Ravin rightly pointed out earlier, that in terms of localization, there is a guideline there, but it was not made with the consensus of at least the leading OEMs. I mean, I personally was part of that meeting where that guideline was formed, but the government was not ready to listen to the fact that the volumes are not there or the component level. Even if you, let's say, assemble something in India, if the source is some outside country, then it makes no sense. So in terms of guideline, yes, it's there, but I'm sure that none of the leading charger OEMs are there yet to even meet the guideline by December. It has to be extended. The major factor being that the industry, as Ravin rightly said, that what we are making in a year's time is someone's weak sort of, out factory output, and that not just one company. I'm sure there are tens of them doing the same thing. So the volume has to reach there where localization makes sense. Plus, secondly, when it comes to the procurement from OMCs or other larger government bodies, which is, I would say, the highest volume in the country, they have to be very strict in terms of the quality of the components or the chargers they buy. I'll give a plain example. As this panel has discussed a lot about the grid stability. We have personally faced with a lot of chargers being deployed at sites of PSUs or oil companies, where the harmonics are beyond 20-30%, the limits as specified by the international standards. Now, this may not cause any immediate effect because the number of chargers is very less. But when we go to a scale, the disturbing harmonics would disrupt the entire grid of surrounding area, because let's say we are talking about 120 kilowatt worth of power. So if you have, let's say, 20% bad harmonic flowing back to the grid when you're charging a vehicle, the vehicle does not get impacted, but the grid around the charging station gets impacted. So if the government continues to buy everything at L1 prices or let's say L2 prices and forces the OEMs to meet those price expectations, then the OEMs are also forced to use low quality components, which results in these sort of issues which will have catastrophic effects going forward. So yes, the guidelines has to be extended. It has to be reworked on with inputs from the OEMs as well as CPOs, not just the people who are going to deploy the chargers. Secondly, the procurement has to shift from a price-sensitive basis to a, I would say, quality-sensitive basis, or a track record sort of sensitive basis, as it is like there in the private industry. And thirdly, in terms of localization, we will get there, yes, but again, it takes time and the volume has to come.
Yeah, I will add one for I think this is right. Because the last meeting I also there, which I focus major, they have to promote the component manufacturer OEM. Because this cannot happen the like EV charger or maybe vehicle side, but has to be the component like MCV, contactor, guns. There has to be some promotions or maybe whatever they require. They give the coming the localization faster.
Yeah, because philosophy is like, you have not seen a charger, so first you need to see the charger. So companies has to experience the charger, then they go beyond that and look at the components, and then you localize the components. With this philosophy, I think, I mean, it's too early to say that mud baby PLI for a charger component can be demanded.
What Earth meant here, one of the most important point, like we follow it in every industry, there is a proper spec-in done on the components. Just imagine an HMIL refinery running in Punjab has an automation system which goes blank every 10 seconds. You will not have a stable oil producing refinery there. So when you can have such great minds at EIL working on each and every component and what specifications have to be worked out, very well valid point that before taking out that mass tenders for the OEMs to getting participated at, and having those ridiculous charges at the petrol pumps, wherein the EV users will spend their they'll get pissed off even at charging at those stations. You should have the spec-in done for each and every component. That will automatically propel the local manufacturers like us, Bright Blue, like Tyrex, like Adore, like Exicom, to actually have each one of us will use those particular components and come out with the charging solutions, and EV users will never have to worry. This thing has happened with the automation industry over the last 20 years, 30 years, when initially the sugar plant used to run manually. Now the sugar plant has a VFD motor and a VFD to save to help you save on the motor. Now, if you can do that in the process automation, you can actually do that in the automobile industry also. So that is where the hard work needs to be done. The spec-in needs to be done properly with the government body, because there are great minds there, technical minds, but they are actually looking forward to pull out the tenders by pasting the specifications of a particular OEM. That's it.
Okay, so let's not go there. Raveen, whatever it is, let's say in any industry, for example, government tries, to solve local issues, to mandate few things. But I have seen, especially in terms of, let's say, technology components, you have been in the similar businesses successfully doing that. So, leaving apart this government procurement, generally, industry takes its own time, and adopts its own quality standards. So do you think that happening in charger manufacturing also? Charger OEMs will focus on quality components other than government procurements, making a quality chargers so that they can sell in India, and even they can export outside India. With your comments, I'll close the panel and open it up for questions.
So I'm going to say a couple of incendiary things with your permission here. The whole fabric of our procurement in India is L1, whether you look at private sector or public sector. That's not changing. Also, India today is increasingly becoming run outside of the public sector in the private sector by 3 companies. And those 3 companies also have the same L1 mechanism, right, in procurement. That's just how it works. So it's an expensive learning curve. They say that experience is a wonderful teacher, but she sends very expensive bills. So there's going to be a lot of expensive steel Godrej cupboards that are sitting on the side of highways in India. And it's going to be a process of learning before we get down to 3 or 4 companies that will finally give you what is required in this market, which is resilience and reliability. Reliability means it doesn't fail. Sorry, resilience means it doesn't fail, and reliability is when it fails, you go and fix it within 4, 6, 8 hours, based on where you are across the country. Now, L1 doesn't give you that at all, right? And L1 means everybody tells you, I'm giving you this converter, but it's actually something else. You get 20 different kinds of converters when you buy it out of China. You think you're getting a particular gun, but you're not. You think you're getting some sort of protections in your charger, but you're not, right? That is going to be the expensive learning curve in India, and we are just going to have to go through that. The second point about Indianization, and I made this point to you when we had personally spoken as well. I've been to all of the factories in China that make converters. Their land and building is free, right? Their big test labs, which are much better than ARAI, are provided by the government because they're creating an ecosystem of test lab manufacturing. They've got to fund it. They've got 150 to 250 people in their R&D doing patent building tasks, off balance sheet, paid for by government because they need to employ them. So the sort of structural advantages they have, which is to build to scale, plus then they get export incentives. They all buy from the same component manufacturer. So, 2 million pieces a year of converters are buying from the same component manufacturer, getting that same advantage. The whole system is built to ensure that the ecosystems of industries across the globe are unable to compete. You have to understand that structurally. As a country, not just government, the people who run businesses, the large businesses in India have to also understand, if you are going for L1, you are decimating manufacturing industry in India. Look at pharmaceuticals, look at electronics, look at solar, look at any industry you want to pick except automotive. Why? Because automotive is a fortress. In which segment? 2-wheelers, small cars. We are not competitive in anything else because the government protects that. So take that as an example, and if we are really serious, the whole government policy structure and the companies that run India need to cohesively work to ensure we are not decimated to become a vassal state of China on the electronics industry.
Thank you very much, Raveen, for your inputs. Obviously, I agree 100% with you that entire ecosystem needs to be focused. Thank you
I'd
very
like to
much
add
for
one thing to what Ravin said as well. When it comes to government companies, yes, we have had multiple discussions. L1 is a bad idea, but when it comes to private companies, they do have stricter evaluation criteria, which OMCs fail to have. So they disqualify automatically the traders or whatever they have. For example, we have 10 OEM approvals, and they took their own year and a half sort of time. I'm sure Sir would agree. All the bus OEMs would take like a year and a half to approve your product. So once they are confident, then it only becomes a competition among the top, let's say 2, 3, or 4 players. Then it's a matter of an L1 fight basis. But that model of private procurement, even though it's an L1 base, it's still better than what the OMCs are doing. So if the OMCs could adopt that sort of system, even if it's at an L1 base, we would still end up with a better infrastructure.
I think the better charger manufacturers have issues with the L1. There are many. I would like to summarize the discussion. In 2013-14, when we started talking about electrification in India, nobody kind of believed that the charging manufacturing, even at this scale, is going to happen. Companies like Glida is going to come into India. Such popularity, very beautiful chargers by all these companies. If you look at these chargers installed, you will feel nice about them. At least they look nice. Whatever content inside is imported or local, I think with improved with time. But whatever progress I think India has seen is encouraging, and in future it's going to be much better only with all of us efforts. Some of the things which we talked, probably the technology innovation is one thing which can solve a lot of consumer related issues, and it can make this more consumer centric. Technology definitely has a role to play. Ecosystem, India should focus a lot on the ecosystem. So overall, the thing is, which I think has come out really very clearly from this panel discussion, is that we need to have more and more representations. We need to have a very strong representation in terms of a charging point association, or maybe a charger association, in which all kind of stakeholders are there, and I'm sure government will hear them very well, because in this industry, the policymakers have been really open. It's a matter of whether they have correct inputs or not. So thank you very much for your inputs. Now I will open it for questions. Only 2 questions we can take, because we have limited time. So can we have the mic, please? I think.
Hi, Shamash is this side from CSEP. My question is, business viability is important in the entire sector, particularly at the charging service end, because it acts as the interface with the EV users. Apart from utilization, what are the main factors which are impacting the business viability of charging service, and how government can play an enabling role to that to make it a viable, attractive business?
Oh, yes, sir.
Yeah. So apart from the capex, which in any case the CPOs is taking that capital risk, the 2 important elements which impacts the viability is the electricity, the fixed demand charges, because the fixed demand charges is directly linked with the utilizations. In normal typical industry, from the day one, you have a planned production capacity, and you amortize the fixed demand over a number of units which you produce. If you translate the same thing here, that will get translated in the more and more utilizations you have, automatically the fixed demand charges will reduce. But till the time you achieve that threshold, the fixed demand charges is killing the business. And that's where the government can, where the Ministry of Power has a good intent that it should be put in abeyance for a few years. And it should be directly linked with the adoption of electric car, I would say. So unless you have, let's say, 5% or 10%, because the more and more car is sold, automatically there will be requirement of more and more charging. So utilizations will automatically pick up. So that's one area. And the second is the land. Now see the arbitrage. Now government land is being available to the PSUs at 1 rupees flat revenue share. And when it comes to the private sector, first of all, it is not made available, because it is crowded out by the PSUs. They have taken over all the public land. and whatever is left, then they come out with a peculiar tenders, and where what they say that who would give us a maximum revenue out of this one.
Here
Now
they
this is the time.
here they follow the H1 criteria.
Yes, I'm saying this is the time when you should support this business. At the one end, you say that this business is not viable. At the second end, you are saying that how much more money you can give me. So they are trying to leverage on the human greed, because as a business person, I would like to be there. Without understanding the business, I might, offer something. See, I come from a hydro background, and the entire hydro projects took a severe beating because of this mindset that how much money we can earn from the concessionaire, right? So even before the project was installed, you were asking that per megawatt, how much capacity, money you will give me. People offered absurd figures. Ultimately, what happened? Private sector did not develop the hydro projects. So it was all in the imagination and the books. I'm saying that at least for next 5 years, very clearly, the government should put the fixed cost in advance and devise bidding criteria. We know because of the vigilance, they can't give you 1 rupee, flat, but devise a criteria on the bidding where it is equitably available to the individual, the CPOs, and beforehand what is my price of the land I'm going to pay for this particular piece of this. So then you can design your business model.
So thank you very much. I think we are really short of time. So, okay, so we can take one more question.
So, hi everyone. Hello. Hello. Hi everyone. This is Lavish. I am from P Manifold Business Solutions, representing them. So, I have many questions to ask each one of you, but I will limit myself to just 2 of them, which are very specific again. So, my first question is to Mr. Puneet sir, that he mentioned open access. So, I want to know that in open access, when CPO asks for open access connection from the DISCOM from another state, so are there any relaxation in transmission and wheeling charges? And second thing, when you ask for a specific load of connection and during solar hours, say, so if you are not able to utilize the entire connection in the solar hours, can you utilize it in after daytime? So this is my first question.
So I think Avdeshji will add little more in this. Look, open access right now is only for captive consumption. I think it's not been made really public and open that anybody and everybody can go and use it. Obviously, government is working in their, that solar urja project which they are doing. The intent when I was earlier saying was that it all needs to be there for you to execute this today, right? It can't happen on paper. It can't happen on offline bidding. Traditionally we've been buying off-peak power and peak power just by bidding something from different states, etc. But some of these things, if you really want to take it to large scale, it really has to happen in real-time basis. Else we'll see a lot of problems happening, a lot of arbitrage happening. Because this is, again, we were talking earlier as well, there has to be a forum which talks about connecting these pieces. Look, there are individual parts which are there, which people are talking about their problems. But there has to be somebody who's talking about connecting all of these dots, from energy to renewable to charging infrastructure to automotive OEMs as well, and the landowners and property owners. And so all of these things have to be connected, and consumer as well. So that has to be there.
So as far as regulation is concerned, there is an open access regulations in place and from the green sources, and the threshold has been reduced from 1 megawatt to 100 kilowatt. And as you understand, open access is on a per point basis. So any point if you have 100 kilowatt and above connections, you are eligible for open access. You can buy. To answer your question, there is no relaxation in the interstate charges or wheeling charges. You have to pay for that one. And regarding whether you can use in non-solar hours of the solar hour or not, so there is a banking allowed. So banking allowed for a month. But see, the EV charging, public EV charging particularly, what Puneet is referring to, the captive, it is very much doable, because once you qualify for an open access, automatically you have to give a schedule at every 15 minutes time. In a public charging stations, I don't know when Ravish would come back for a charging tomorrow. I can schedule it at fine, his car is 60 kilowatt. Tomorrow I will schedule it for 60 kilowatt. But Ravi's doesn't come back. He says that I'll charge at home, or today I don't go anywhere, I work from home. Then what happens with the schedule? Then there's a huge deviation penalty for that one. So essentially for the charging, public charging, open access, as of now, is not applicable, I would say, or the viable in the sense the government wants. But in order to increase more and more renewable sourcing, government has another mechanism where they say that you can source the power from a green tariff. You have to pay certain delta. So if the tariff is 6 rupees, probably we, like in Hyderabad, we pay 50 to 60 paise more per unit, and they give us a certificate that this power has been supplied to you, drawn from solar or wind. So that is the way by which currently public charging stations can be driven by more and more green energy. But open access, it's still a lot of tweaking is required in the regulations to make the public charging suitable for the open access.
Thank you. That actually answers my question. Final thing, sir. The question is for Avdesh sir only. That what is the discrepancy between connected load and sanctioned load for a particular charging station? So does the DISCOM gives you the entire load which you demand for, or does it just consider some utilization which presently is very low and only gives you some part of the demanded load?
See, I mean, this is an area which is very much in varies from a state to a state, regulation to regulator. As to the best of my knowledge and my understanding of the regulations, though they sometimes demand, some of the DISCOMs demands that whatever is your connected load, you have to apply for that as a sanctioned load. But it is not necessary as per the regulations. I can have a connected load of, let's say, like we are doing it. So we have, like in Hyderabad, if you go, we have 102 chargers there, 102 charging points. So total connected load is around 1.8 megawatt, right? Whereas we might not have taken the sanction load so far, because we know that all the charging points will not get connected same point of time. So why do we require that much of power? Because this will increase my fixed demand charges, operating costs. So there is no requirement of that one. You can go as long as you are able to justify from the safety point of view, because the problem is, if you take if you have a higher connected load, you have taken a lesser sanction load. The problem is that you can still draw power, up to your connected load. How do you ensure that your transformer, the other electrical systems are fully safety compliant? That is the problem. If you are able to convince the regulator, if you are able to convince the distribution company, you can be sanctioned a lesser sanction load compared to your connected load.
Thank you very much, all of you, for joining and contributing. I hope it was really useful for all of us. So thank you very much. We all are here, so we can catch up one-on-one. Thank you very much.